In this video, we're going to write an actual time series market data, using the Python SDK. The data written will be then visible in the UI, or queryable via SDK. For more information about the UI, and the different types of market data extractable, you can check the UI tutorials. For the write of data, as in the previous video, we need to import the core Artesian libraries like Artesian configuration, Granularity, and market data, and the aggregation rule from Artesian market data library, as well as some support libraries. For better support of date times and time zones, the suggested libraries are datetime and dateutil. Once we import all the necessary libraries, we can configure Artesian by inserting the necessary link and our API key, as showed in the Python environment setup tutorial. In order to be able to manage the data in Artesian, we need to instantiate a market data service. This is different from the simple data extraction in which we have to instantiate the query service. In both cases, a parameter for the definition of the service has to be passed. Now we need to define the provider and the market data name. This is done, setting a market data identifier, which is the object that contains the core market data information. In our case, the provider will be called Python SDK. The curve name, because we are writing an actual time series, will be actual write. After this initialization, we can start to write the basis for our market data, based on the necessary attributes. The provider name and the market data name can be recalled by the market data identifier previously defined. The original granularity, which in our case will be day, but we can choose other options such as 10 minutes, year or even quarter. The market data type, which in this case will be actual time series. We also need to set an original time zone, which will be CET for us. The aggregation rule is an operation to be done when we want to extract data in a granularity different from the original one. The aggregation rule can be undefined, sum and divide, or average and replicate. In this case will be average and replicate. And the tags are not mandatory, but are important to refine the research in the UI. In our case, the classification will be tutorial SDK Python value 1. Now that we set the basis for our actual time series, we need to check if this time series already exists. The check is done using the provider name, and the market data name that represents the unique identifier, per each market data registered in Artesian. If it exists, the system will return all the metadata associated with that market data. If there is no matching, it will be created via the command register market data. We can now proceed to insert our values in this market data. It has to use the market data identifier previously defined. The original time zone of the data we're going to write, which is Central European Time, and the rows of data we want to insert into our actual write. The actual rows are a dictionary. The key of the dictionary is the date time of the time series that we are writing. The values, in this case, are just an example of what you can insert. The only other mandatory field to be written is the downloaded at. This is more a metadata information. It should represent when the data has been generated. The last step of this write is to upload the data in the system. This is done with the command upsert data. This example was based on a daily granularity. Let's now consider an hourly granularity. For a granularity lower than daily, the original time zone supported is the UTC time zone. The hourly granularity needs values for each hour, per day. We will keep the date time on the 1st January. Guided by the IntelliSense, we can see that we need to insert the specific hours, minutes, and seconds, for this market data. Each specific date time will have a different value. In this example, we will create values for each hour starting from 5 AM to 8 AM. Unless there is an error in the writing of the data, we have no results in the terminal, but we can check in the UI, or extracting the data generated via code. Just for simplicity we will check the data on the UI. On the UI, We can select on the left side of the screen the type of our market data and see all the market data available in Artesian. By selecting Actual, we will reduce the menu options and see all the providers that have bid-ask market data. We can see our Python SDK under provider name and also our tutorial SDK Python tag. If we click it, we can see the market data we just created.